Welcome to Aging Well, Eating Well, my new podcast. I'm Mary Merheim and I'm on a mission to improve and educate the nation on nutrition in later life. It's a hugely neglected area that has a massive impact on the health of our aging population and the people who might be caring for them. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Janet Shreeve. Hi, Janet. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to come on. I'm delighted to be here.
No. Thank you for agreeing to join me. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are.
Okay. Well, in reality, my probably a bit like all of us, when you get to a certain age, you've got quite a few bits and pieces that you've done in the background. I used to teach Italian. I started working in the care sector back in 2008, working for a living care company in Kent. Moved to Bristol 2010, set up the living care service for Care UK, set up Noble Living Care, which was sold in February 2020, and basically set up Shreeve Care Services as the aging population of myself being 65 years old when I set it up, which is now 3 years ago. And I set it up really for a variety of reasons, but my absolute passion is giving people advice about what their choices are for the care that they require as they get older. Because quite often people aren't given enough choice or information about what's actually out there. And I think it's really important that they have that choice because if you get it right, it can be hugely successful and make a massive difference to people in later life.
That is so true. And so true about people not knowing what their options are and what the
Mm.
choices are out there and people kind of being faced with it at a very late stage and just realizing they need it and they need it now and what do they do? So you've
Exactly.
you've you've developed an app or something, haven't you?
We've developed an app which is for it's a bit like Uber for Care, and that's called Agora Staff. And obviously, I have my own podcast as well, You Care, I Care, which you've already been on, and I was absolutely delighted to have you on with me as well. So I've gone through a sort of variety of things within the care sector, but for me, I suppose it's because I'm getting older and, having had a bit of a hiccup myself this year, not for any major illness, but mainly because I couldn't walk for a bit. It did rather bring home
Mm.
the fact of getting older and what it could be like. And one of the interesting things was that the first thing I couldn't be bothered to do was I couldn't be bothered to cook
Gosh.
because not because I didn't want to,
Yeah.
because I was struggling with my mobility to
Mm-hmm.
cook. So I was cooking sitting down, which was totally alien to me.
Mm.
And I've always enjoyed cooking. It's a big part of my life. And I think if you eat properly, and you don't have to eat masses, but if you eat properly,
Mm.
you feel so much better. And and I think it's the same thing as one gets older. You have certain things that you enjoy eating and certain things that you don't.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we give people the choice of what they would like to eat. Because if you do that and they're having the right nutrition, the right fluid, then the chances are they're going to be fitter.
That's so true. I mean, I totally agree. When I give advice to various people, it's like, well, we have to start from what someone's eating now. There is no point putting a plate of healthy food in front of somebody and expecting them to eat it because that's not tempting. We've got to
No,
tempt somebody to eat and then upgrade what they're eating, perhaps if needs be. So we need to do tweaks to what somebody is already eating. Otherwise, you will be faced with resentment and rejection and all those awful emotions that will drive a sort of a knife between your relationship, won't they?
absolutely. And I think the other thing is because so many people don't get a significant amount of care given to them if they're local authority funded. They might
Mm,
have half an hour at lunchtime or half an hour in the evening. Well, with the best will in the world, there's no way if you're going to go in there and do personal care as well and make sure that the house is tidy, you're particularly going to have enough time to make sure they're eating properly.
mm,
And I think that is a worry. It's certainly a worry for me. And I, as you know, have worked in living care for quite a long while. I've actually been a registered manager and nominated individual for living care. And the difference when you can see that the carers are cooking proper meals, they're ensuring that they have their vegetables in the way that the client would like them, of course, and having a choice in when they eat rather than having to, eat a sandwich or something that's hastily made and full of
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. I totally agree again what you're saying. I mean, um, I think care homes have their place.
Yes.
I think there is sometimes a need that it is the best of a bad bunch of options, perhaps. But having somebody in your house doing the things that you would have done had you been more able,
Yeah.
and as you say, just giving you the things that you want when you want it. If you want a hard-boiled egg at, I don't know, 11 o'clock in the morning, with the best will in the world in a care home, that's unlikely to happen. Whereas if you've got family around you, or you've got somebody who's doing some sort of live-in care, that's a totally easy option, isn't it?
It is. And I think what people often forget with the older generation, they are much more used to eating proper food.
Yeah.
They're not used to the constant snack that we are seeing everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I can remember with my own mother. I mean, she did enjoy her cakes. I will make that point. She would always enjoy a homemade cake. She was a jolly good baker of cakes, actually, as well. But equally, she always made food. She didn't like processed food. She just
Mhm.
didn't. If I mean, there was the odd time when I'd sort of sent some for her when I was away or whatever, and she just didn't want to know.
No,
It
my
was,
father was the same. God
yeah,
forbid he had ever ate a ready meal. That
yeah,
was just not on his agenda at
exactly,
all. It was not. It
exactly.
wasn't an easy option. It wasn't a nice option. It wasn't an option.
No, and I think it's because, and even now, a lot of people have grown up with the fact that they eat 3 meals a day. They
Hmm.
probably don't eat beyond maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, sorry, in the evening, because that's what they did.
Yeah.
It's a totally different scenario.
Mm.
And and actually it was interesting because when I was thinking about, talking about coming on here, I can remember, I mean, I'm talking of quite a few years ago when I lived in Kent. I used to go every evening at 6 o'clock to cook a meal for a gentleman. He was just around the corner. He'd been an accountant, and I think he'd lived in India for a while. And his routine was, I used to go in, he'd be standing there with his whiskey, which he would always have beforehand. And
Not
I
a bad,
would,
not a
yeah,
bad appetite
no.
stimulant at all.
And I had to have a glass of vermouth with him,
Oh,
even though
how
it probably
awful.
wasn't, but anyway, I did. But I always had to cook the
Yeah.
meal.
Hmm.
And he would stand in the kitchen and he would chat to me. It didn't have to be a complicated meal,
Mm.
but it was always discussing, and he enjoyed discussing what he would eat. That
Yeah.
was a big part of his day. And I mean, he used to go and sit in his dining room, and he used to sit at the table, which he'd done that. And I used to cook his meal, and then he'd always have a dessert as well. It was very much he liked this,
Yeah.
and I did it for years.
Mm.
And and it was quite interesting. And I mean, he lived to be about 96, I think, so it was hardly a bad way of life. But I think it's the fact that it was proper food.
Yes.
It was vegetables. It was nothing grand. It was
Yeah.
just proper food. And I think if we can make sure that people have that choice as much as possible, I
Mm.
think we'll actually have far less issues that people may encounter in later life.
I think that you're really right there. Um, I think a little things that we need to be make sure is that that meal that we're doing isn't a big plate of food. And I'm
No.
and I know I'm talking to the converted, so I know you know what I'm talking about. But I think a lot of people when they get older, and not everybody, but they've actually lost their appetite. And sometimes being faced with a plate of food is just, it's a no-go. It's just not going to happen.
Mm.
So I think if we do that wonderful, genuine food meal that we're talking about, that an awful lot of older people like, then we try and make it a little bit smaller
Yeah.
and not intimidating. I think what we have learned recently is the importance of protein as we age.
Yeah.
I think we had a very traditional way of eating, that we would have toast or cereal in the morning, and then a light lunch and a heavy evening meal. And that was the evening meal was heavy in the protein.
Mm,
Now, we can't store protein in our body. It just gets eliminated. So I think we need to stick to those traditional routes if we can, but actually fortify these meals, because we now know that we should be eating protein throughout the day,
yeah,
particularly as we age, because we know how important that is for skin, for wound healing, for just generally building yourself up and your immune system. So much as somebody may have always eaten a slice of toast and jam for breakfast, that is doing somebody no good whatsoever. We need to make sure
absolutely.
they've got that protein.
And it's interesting because when you have your main meal as well at lunchtime, when you have a Sunday lunch,
Mm,
you really don't want to eat very much for the rest of the day, do you? Because you've had your meat and you've had your vegetables and you feel quite full.
true.
Whereas if you, I mean, I find now that I can't eat late at night. I much prefer eating earlier in the evening. But I do think as well that people focus much more on proper food. They would
Yeah.
have butter, for
Mm.
example.
Yes, I'm a real advocate for whole milk and butter and cheese.
Exactly. And in fact, one of these days when I make it down to Suffolk again, my friend who I come with, she lives in Essex, and she won't mind my saying this. She is 87. And if you saw her, you would not think this lady is 87. Now, she eats a very balanced diet,
Mm,
and she eats sort of quite a lot of fiber in the morning.
hmm
She also has protein every day. And
hmm
she's quite lucky because where she lives, there's a market twice a week. And actually, where I've moved to, there's a market twice a week. And it makes such a difference because you get your fresh vegetables at a much better price and it's all
mm,
literally fresh. So she goes there every week and there's an amazing fish stall. So she buys all of her week's fish.
yeah.
And it's not a complicated recipe. It might just be a piece of grilled fish, but she always eats three well-balanced meals a day, and I am absolutely convinced it is why she is still going so strong at 87.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, that's amazing. Good on her. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there that don't do that. I think, as you say, the culture has changed a little bit, and
Mhm.
some of the older people we're talking about actually aren't, could still be 20 years younger than your dear friend,
Yeah.
or even 30 years younger, and be of the more convenience food generation, perhaps. And I have found, I mean, yes, I think you're absolutely right. 3 good meals a day is what we would love to aim for
Yeah.
everybody. But when people lose their appetite, which some people do, it's so important to try and introduce snacks
I agree.
and have little sort of bowls of snacks ready, and to snack on things like nuggets of cheese
Mm,
or dried fruit or eggs, as I said. Just have snacks available, because if you're not necessarily hungry, and particularly at mealtime, we mustn't ignore the time when you are hungry. So
exactly.
if somebody does have a rumble of the tumble at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's really handy if we have something to satisfy that, isn't it?
And making it available that they can get it easily.
Yes.
I think that's the other thing. It's also um, it's ensuring that they can reach the food
Yes.
and ensuring whatever disability, whatever problems that they have, because this is a thing that I have noticed is that quite often food is left there, but the person can't get it.
Mm. Oh, I've seen that.
And that's
Glasses
heartbreaking.
of water on the table, but out of reach.
Exactly.
Oh,
So we've got to be so careful. Now, obviously, I appreciate that not everyone can afford to have living care or needs living care,
mm,
but we can still, I do think we have a duty of care
hmm
to our elderly or over whatever age, it doesn't really matter what age they are, actually,
mm,
that people that require care, we do have that duty to ensure that they have the right the right diet that will enable them to be as healthy as possible.
yeah. I mean, stronger for longer is my
Yeah.
is a phrase I use all the time. As I said, we're not going to stop people falling off the precipice and
No.
whatever. But if we can keep people out of hospital, or if they've come home, we need to build them up. I mean, that's, there's the whole thing about, used to just be Lucozade and Horlicks, didn't it? That would build people up. And then they discovered these yogurt drinks that I'm always loath to give. But actually, all that really good nutrition, if we make a little bit of effort, we can find that in our food, can't we? And we
I
just need
think
to
we
work it.
can. And I think the main thing is making it so that they want to drink it, because a lot of those sort of
Yes.
drinks people
Oh,
don't want to drink. I mean, I know my own mother hated them.
yeah. Well, I
And
just think, if you've got to 80 and you've never drunk a sweet flavored yogurt in your life,
mm,
you're not going to want to start drinking it now. And I
no.
have sat across somebody many a times across the table going, you eat that, you drink that, it's really good for you. I'm not having it, it's revolting, but you have it. Is is just a dreadful situation to be in. So yes, I think
It
we
is.
we talk about fortifying all the food. If you've got vegetables, put oil on it, put butter on it, put cheese on it. Just add, Marvel, the dried skimmed milk powder. If you fortify milk with that, that adds so many
Mm.
more calories because it's got really good protein in it as well. And we've
I
got to
think
keep people strong.
you do. And also, I think, I mean, I have thought for a long while, and I do know several people who are providing this sort of service, is we step in with care again
Yeah,
when there is things have gone a bit too far.
yeah.
And I've always thought that if we spent a little bit more preventing people getting to
Mm,
that point. So it becomes harder to go to the shops.
yeah.
It becomes harder to prepare a meal.
Mm.
And I know you can do it. There used to be Meals on Wheels, and there are still some areas that do things like that where it is a
Not
proper
not
food, but
many
not
though. There's an
many,
awful
not
lot of those have
many.
dropped off. The
Um,
WRVS or whatever it was,
oh,
they don't do
they've
it anymore.
gone in
Yeah.
most cases. And I think if we can, it's like, for example, I know in Bristol there are two or three now, in fact, more than that, probably about five or six day centres that I know where
Hmm.
people go and they get proper food.
Yes. Yeah.
And if they do that and you have one really good meal, even if you don't have, if the rest is a bit slice of toast or something, you do know that they've at least had a well-balanced meal.
Mm.
And I think you're absolutely right as well about the size of the portions, because if you get a dinner plate from what probably our grandparents had, they were tiny in comparison to
Mm.
what people
Mm.
have these days. But it's just trying to prevent people having to go into hospital, people
Yeah.
having to go into a care home, because I
Mm.
think we assume that the NHS is free, which we all know it absolutely isn't. But a night in hospital costs an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And maybe if some of that money was spent ensuring that people did have a bit more support about eating, about keeping themselves well, I think it would be
Yeah.
a lot better.
Very wise words there. And
Oh,
going back to what you said about day centres, I mean, that is just a fantastic resource because
mm,
we all know as well that we eat better and we eat more in company.
hmm
I'm as guilty as anybody. I live on my own. Um, do I make a proper meal every single day? Probably not, because it's only me, and I've got all my arms and my legs, and
Yeah.
and I'm still fighting fit. And I think there are so many reasons why older people don't eat as much as they should do, and one of those things is loneliness.
Yeah.
And so yeah, eating a sociable meal is an absolutely brilliant idea.
And it's also getting to the shops,
Yeah,
because it
keeping
depends.
mobilized.
Yeah. I mean, when depends where you live, but if I look at where I live, I mean, yes, I could walk into the town, but it's a good half an hour's walk.
Mm,
And that's fine because I can do it, but somebody else might not be able to. And I mean, as I said, my friend, she is still driving, so she is able to drive into the market and get whatever she needs. But I do think more of this sort of shopping, can we get your shopping? Can we get some things for you? And I think that gives the person who's putting the list together a reason to sit and think maybe a little bit more about what they would eat
Hmm.
with a little bit of advice. I don't know. It's just, I've
Yeah.
always thought if we can prevent a bit more, we
Yes.
wouldn't have so many problems.
Oh, that, I mean, without a doubt. And going back to having a sort of a live-in carer or somebody who's there more than just a couple of times a day, that the care also involves going with somebody to the shops, doesn't it? I mean,
Yep.
if somebody's daunted about not wanting to go to the shops, is it because they might fall? Is it because they might be a bit breathless? Are they worried they might, I don't know, bump into somebody they don't want to? But um, if you've got a carer there, then that support may well just keep you more mobile and actually keep you going to the shop. And then you've got that choice, haven't you?
Absolutely. It's the twofold, isn't it? If you've got the
Yeah.
carer that's coming with you to go to the shops, which gives you the choice and keeps you independent.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the shops and you look at things, I mean, we all do it. We go to a
Mm.
supermarket or a shop or whatever it is, and you think, oh, I quite fancy that. I hadn't thought about that, which you probably wouldn't do if you were sending someone else to
Yeah.
get it. And
Yeah.
it's also that it's the companionship
Hmm.
that arises from that. And when I worked for the Living Care Company back in 2016, I mean, basically, we used to call them care companions
Mm.
because the companionship was almost, in many cases, if not as important, but certainly on a par with the care. Because the
Totally. Yeah.
companionship is, and you're absolutely right. If somebody says you go out for a meal or you have someone over for dinner, you immediately start thinking, oh, well, what shall I cook? What shall I have?
Mm.
Whereas if it's just you, you don't do it
Yeah.
in the same way.
No, you don't. And I think that's very true. I mean, I worked for a care agency for a while and I had my time restrictions.
Mm,
And I always used to leave. And just before I would leave, I would say, now, is there anything else I can do for you? And 9 times out of 10, it was, oh, could you just stay for a chat? Could
yeah.
you just do a little bit more of this? And I felt dreadful because I didn't have time for that. That wasn't on my list of things to actually
No,
do.
no.
But yes, companionship, I think, is a great force for helping people keep their appetite. And going back to what we said about shopping and being there when somebody is cooking your food, those are giving you all the signals that it's time to eat as well, aren't they? They're
Yeah,
they're they're building it up. And if somebody's got a bit of perhaps dementia or even just depression or whatever, and food is not a priority, all these little cues will then make them possibly want to eat a bit more when they're sitting down at the table, won't they?
absolutely. And I think also for the most part, I won't say for everybody, but I do think for the most part, that is a generation that sat at the table to have their meal.
Hmm.
They didn't sit on the sofa. I mean, sometimes they did, but latterly, but certainly growing up, you sat at the table and you had your meal.
Yeah. And
And
and I
that was
think you're
what you
right. I
did.
think we should be honoring that rather encouraging Auntie to come and sit with us and eat how we eat. We
Mm,
should be going and eating in her environment and making her feel comfortable,
yeah,
rather than, as you say, juggling a plate on the sofa with the dog coming up.
leaping around. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think, we're just on the same page. We want older people to feel comfortable eating. We want them to eat well throughout the day. Companionship, I think we've talked about, is so important. Even if it's just somebody popping in. Whenever I give some advice, I always say, look, when you're going to visit Mrs. Brown or whatever, always take something that you're going to share to eat.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah,
Don't just deliver a lasagna and say, oh, you can put that in the microwave later. Go with something that you intend to eat together because, eating is such a social activity, isn't it? It's a
it
cultural
is.
thing.
It is. And I also do think that if you if you encourage someone to eat with you,
Yeah.
if someone hasn't got, I mean, I can remember years ago driving all the way to Kent and say to spend the day with my mother. And she would say, oh, I don't think I really want to go out. And then I used to look at her and she said, oh, yes, all right, come on. And we used to go, and she would always have something.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's almost that little push that they need to feel that that is still a valued part of their life.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm a great fan of ensuring that people have what they want as long as is humanly possible. I think
Mm,
really that's what it's all about, and that includes
yeah.
food. And the
Yeah.
really interesting thing about it is when you put in your CQC application and all of the rest of it, you have all the policies and procedures about first aid and safeguarding, and rightly so. I'm not disputing that. But somehow the nutrition side of it
Mm.
is not focused on in anything like the same depth, and it should be.
Oh, it so should be. It really should be. I mean, I worked in a care home for a little while, and naming no names and not even giving the town, but the budget was so small for
Yeah,
food,
yeah.
and maybe there might have been a couple of vegetarians on the floor that I worked, and again, I know I'm harking on about protein, but there were meals, and I just thought there's no protein in that meal
Mm,
whatsoever.
mm,
They've just been given the vegetable alternative
yeah.
to what the rest of the residents are having, and that's not good enough.
No, it simply
Um,
isn't. It
but
really
yeah,
isn't.
I mean, I'm not knocking care homes. There are some wonderful ones out there that really do
Yes.
care, but I think it's not a priority from top down.
I would agree. I would agree. It's always about all of the other things, and I think it's just as important as many of the things that we do make a big deal about. I do think it's as important, and we
Mm,
forget about it because it's not deemed to be. Well, it doesn't really matter. They'll
no,
just eat whatever,
yeah.
and I just think it's wrong. I really do.
Mm, yeah, I do. I mean, as we talked about breakfast, just having a couple of slices of toast and jam is not going to set somebody
No.
up for the day. And equally, having a cup of tea and two custard creams because they had their tea at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and they're having a couple of custard creams at 8 o'clock in the evening. It's not going to do anybody any good. It'll give them a sugar rush. They probably won't sleep very well, but they're not
Okay.
going to have any nutrition from that, are they?
Not really, no. But it is a huge subject that's often. Well, I think it is. I think it genuinely is often overlooked.
Yeah.
It's not quite the bottom of the pile because that's not fair. It isn't.
Mm,
But it's not viewed with the same importance because going back to where we started this from, in a half an hour visit, you are never going to be able to cook a meal
no,
with the best will in the world.
no.
It doesn't. So I don't quite know. Well, I suppose we just keep talking about it, making an issue
Yeah,
about it.
I mean that's what I'm trying. As you said, we're educating the nation to really think about the fact that if somebody has had good nutrition for weeks or months, then if they do have a fall or they do end up in hospital, they're going to be there for a less long time. They're going to heal better, and that's not only better for that individual person, but it's saving the NHS
Of course.
millions.
Of course it is. Yeah,
Um, and it seems crazy that it's not a priority, doesn't it?
I
To
totally
everybody.
agree. We will just keep banging the drum.
Bumpity bump, bump, bump.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Janet, you've been an absolute pleasure to talk to, as always. I loved coming onto your podcast. Remind me what it was called?
You care, I care.
Yeah. Oh,
And,
it was so good.
obviously, it can be found on Spotify and wherever, and Apple. And obviously, my website is shrevecareservices.co.uk.
Yeah. And I think the idea of helping people or by signposting them what care is available and what they can have is hugely valuable.
Yeah.
I completely admire what you're doing.
I should just point out one thing before we go, because I thought this was really interesting last week. I was doing it wasn't a care show. I ended up being doing the GB Expo in Swindon, a bit last minute, and I'd had a really, really busy week for varying reasons as well. But anyway, it was the hot. It was last Thursday. It was so
Oh,
hot. I cannot
yeah.
tell you how hot it was in there, and there really wasn't much aircon. But there were several stands, and there was one stand about three things away from me. And they had a permanent queue of people on that stand. Now it's a firm of accountants, which is not usually the crowd
Mm,
that would actually grab your attention.
no.
Very cleverly, they had homemade cake.
Uh,
And that cake was pretty good.
yeah. Well, I always talk about the fact that there's no VAT on cakes
No.
because after the Second World War, when they were rationing, the powers that be, the suits, decided that cakes were essential and biscuits were a luxury. So even since then, there's no VAT on cakes, but there's VAT on biscuits.
Well, there you go. That's it. That was the interesting thing. I thought, isn't it amazing? There's everybody with their sweets and this, that, and the other. The stand that had the most people were the accountants with a cake.
Yeah, well, and it's an essential part of British life, along with a cup of tea, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Which is why I made grandma cakes.
Indeed.
Because they are nutritious cakes that feel like brownies to be eaten with a cup of tea, as a great substitute for a cake that has empty calories in it.
Yeah, and they're pretty yummy too.
They are delicious, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you again. Thank you, Janet, for
Very
joining me.
welcome.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome.
I look forward to inviting you back again.
Yes, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.